So good morning, everybody. My name is Lori Arthur Carmichael. I'm from IT Training and Support. And today we're going to be talking about the Whiteboard apps that are available for faculty. So specifically, we're going to be talking about the devices that are available to support whiteboarding, a little bit about whiteboard basics in Zoom, just any whiteboard app that you're going to use in Zoom, how would you do that? Then we'll talk about the Zoom whiteboard. We'll talk about Microsoft Whiteboard, Microsoft OneNote. Then we'll switch over to the iPad and we'll look at iPad Notes and Dropbox Paper that's available on iPad. And I'll kind of touch on Microsoft Whiteboard and OneNote that are available on iPad as well. And then of course, questions at the end. So we have a couple of devices that are intended to help support whiteboarding. So we have, if you have an iPad, we have Apple Pencils. Makes it a little bit easier to draw on those. If you don't have an Apple iPad or you prefer to use like a laptop or a desktop computer, we do have Wacom tablets, which perform much the same function. They're both available through the faculty device request, which is some of the resources that I'll be sending you after this class. But we do have both of these available. And if you find that one works better for you than the other, you can try out both of them. You have to do one at a time, but you're able to request one, try it out, and if you don't like it, you can switch to the other one. So whenever you're sharing any kind of whiteboard app in Zoom, you're going to be using the share screen function. So you'll click share screen, and then either you can share your entire screen, which is what I'm doing right now, because that allows me to switch back and forth between multiple applications, or you can choose the actual application itself, like Whiteboard or OneNote, or the Zoom whiteboard is also here, and you would just select Whiteboard. And then once you've made a selection, you'll choose Share. So in Zoom, starting a whiteboard, you'll do Share Screen, and then Whiteboard. And then once the whiteboard is up, as the host, you have a toolbar, and then if you allow your participants to annotate, they'll have a participants toolbar as well. They're slightly different. You have a few more features, like this laser pointer that I'm using right here. This is only available for the host. The participants have an arrow, which I also have too. Looks kind of like this, but I kind of prefer the laser pointer. So for the host, this select allows you to go back and forth between like a mouse versus using one of these tools that you have here. So text, as it implies, it's a text box. You can just type in your text here. You can also copy and paste text into here. So if you had something in like a Word document or somewhere else, you can copy it and paste it into the whiteboard. The next one is draw. And as you can see, that kind of expands to allow you to do different things. So different lines, you have some shapes, you have arrows. There's also a selection tool that allows you to sort of highlight a particular spot. And then of course, if you just draw, it's just a line. The next one is stamps, and there are some preset stamps that are available. So I have an arrow, check mark, X, a star, heart, and a question mark. So I can't change any of these. I can't change the color. I can't make them bigger. I can't really do much with them. They're just preset stamps. But these are kind of nice because you're able to actually have your students, if you have them participate with their toolbar, they can put these next to specific answers. Like if you had 3 different sentences on your whiteboard and you said put a check mark next to the one that you think is correct and put an X next to ones that you think are incorrect, you could kind of had that set up. So yeah, so those are the stamps that are available there. Okay, so after stamp is this spotlight. So the spotlight is this laser pointer right here, or as I mentioned, there's also an arrow that you can choose. So it's just to help direct people's attention so that you know what you're talking about on the particular screen. The eraser, this, all you have to do is click in one place on one thing and it erases the whole thing. So it's not something where you have to move back and forth your eraser. You can actually just click on each individual thing to erase it if you just want to erase one thing. Next to that is format. And format allows you to change your text, like the color, if it's bold or italic, the size. Also, for your drawings, it will change the color of your lines or your arrows, etc. So for example, if I wanted to change the color of this text, I could type in, let's change this to purple. This is my new text. And here, we'll just erase that. So there's a few options there with under format, but you may want to choose them before you make the choice of either text or your drawing tool. And of course, undo undoes the last thing that you did, and then redo redoes what you last did. The clear option I really like because you have several options as a host. I can clear all of the drawings, I can clear just my drawings, or I can clear my viewers' drawings. So again, this is really nice if you set up a whiteboard and you put 3 sentences for your students to look at, you can have them annotate the whole thing, and then you can clear just their drawings without erasing what you've put in there. So it's kind of nice to have that option. For participants, they will only ever be able to clear their own drawings. They won't be able to clear anything else. And then the last option there is save. And this is definitely one that we recommend that you have enabled. But what you'll do is you'll hit save. And then if I go here to my folder, you can see it's actually saved a screenshot to this folder for me. Let me go ahead and clear all of my drawings here. So you can see we're all back to normal here. And as you can tell, you don't have to necessarily use the annotation just on the whiteboard. You can annotate any shared screen. So you can have people annotate a PowerPoint like this. That's absolutely fine. So you can, any shared screen, you can enable and disable that as well. All right, so how to share Microsoft Whiteboard. So again, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can do share screen and then share your entire screen. Or if you already have Microsoft Whiteboard open, you can just share Microsoft Whiteboard. So let's go ahead and, we'll look at that. So I'm going to close this. So I have a whole folder here that's my whiteboard tools. So I'm going to choose Whiteboard. And Microsoft Whiteboard is not part of like your Office suite, but it is available in the App Store, so the Microsoft App Store. And one of the resources I'll be sending you is a copy of our user guide on all of the available apps for whiteboarding, along with links to where you can download them. So there'll be a link to where you can download Microsoft Whiteboard. So signing into it is the same as signing into any other Microsoft Office application. So at the moment, I'm signed in with my work account. So if you are signed in to, say, Word or PowerPoint or any other Office app on your device here, you shouldn't have to, again, enter all of your sign-in information. What's nice about this is it auto-saves your whiteboards, and it synchronizes to essentially your cloud account with Office. So it is available on your iPad as well. So I can start something on my desktop here, and then exit it on my iPad, make some changes, and it'll synchronize back here as well. So if I create a new whiteboard, down here at the bottom, you see I have the option to do drawing. So I just have my mouse at the moment. So I can sort of draw with my mouse. I definitely recommend if you're going to be doing inking mode on this, you want to have something like a Wacom tablet or be on your iPad with an Apple Pencil. It is very difficult to draw with a mouse. But you have lots of different options here. So it's created some presets here with the colors. I can change those. So if I don't want like a light blue pen, I can click on it and say, you know what, I want this sort of orange. Let's do orange. And so now this is defaulted to an orange pen. There's also a highlighter, eraser. Works very much, it's more like a traditional eraser. I have to kind of go back and forth to erase something. There is a ruler. What I have found though is it is very difficult to adjust the ruler on the desktop version. It's much easier to do this on the iPad because you can just use 2 fingers and switch it around. So if you need to be able to do a lot of stuff with the ruler, I would be tempted to do this on the iPad. And then of course there's options to select things, move them around. So when I'm done inking, I can come back here and I have more options. So I can add text. I can put in a note, so I can have little sticky notes on here as well. I can insert images. I can also put in some lists. I can use a template. I can insert a PDF or a Word document or a PowerPoint. It's kind of nice to be able to do stuff like that with a PowerPoint and with a PDF, because let's say, for example, I go in here. I can say, I want this one. So I can put an image here and then have students annotate that. Or I can annotate it myself. If I don't need the students to be able to do the whiteboarding, I can just do all of this myself. But I can set it up ahead of time, which is harder to do with the Zoom whiteboard. And the Zoom whiteboard is not going to allow you to actually put images in there. It's really just a blank whiteboard. So if you do need to be able to set things up ahead of time, I definitely recommend that you use something like Microsoft Whiteboard. The one thing that is tricky with Whiteboard here is sharing. So at the moment, I am the only person who has permission to actually make any changes or view this document. I mean, I can share it on the screen, but having my students annotate it is a little bit trickier. I can use, the Zoom Whiteboard annotations, and they can kind of just draw all over it. But this is not actually impacting this document. It's kind of just laid on top of it, like a transparency kind of. So it gets cleared out and it doesn't get saved as part of this document. However, you can come up here to invite someone, and you can put in people's names, their email addresses, and share it with all of them. And you can indicate, do you want to have them have the ability to edit it, or do you want them to just have view access only? Yeah, I don't think there is a link. You have to basically share it with people here. Oh, there we are, sharing link. I thought it was there. So I can also create the sharing link, post it into the chat in Zoom, and now everybody should have access to it. They may still need to log in with their campus Office 365 account, but they'll be able to come in here and look at it. They'll be able to make edits to it, annotate it. So it's very helpful. Plus, you're able to export. And so I can export as an image. This just is a high quality image. I recommend the PNG. That's what most people will be able to open. So even if you don't allow your students to annotate this, you can export it and then put it into Canvas or Moodle, wherever you'd like, so that then they have this saved somewhere. When I go back here, if I click here, you'll see that it's marked as untitled. So they're always just going to be untitled unless you give them a title. So you may want to give it some sort of title. If you plan on saving it and if you want to export it. And so you can see, like, for example, here's one that I actually did share from a class a little while ago. I created this and then I invited. So Farima has access to do this. So you are able to go back and you can either share it ahead of time or after the fact. Either way works, but it is saved here until you delete it. So if you don't want to delete it, you can just leave it there. So the next whiteboard app that we're going to look at is OneNote. So again, you can do share screen and then either share your entire screen. You can share just OneNote if you have it open already. Or of course, as with Whiteboard, you could also do it on the iPhone or iPad if that's easier for you. So I'm going to go here again to my Whiteboard tools. Now there's a couple of different OneNotes. OneNote 2016 is part of your Office applications. It's usually installed as part of that. However, I don't believe they are updating this version of the app anymore. So there is also a Windows version. They look a little bit different. This is the one that you can get just on the App Store for Microsoft. I'm kind of partial to this one. I just like the setup. I'm more used to it. But they essentially allow you to do the same things. So OneNote, essentially, it is broken down into notebooks. And within each notebook, you have sections. And within each section, you have pages. So this is sort of a sample setup. If I had a notebook that is for this academic year, and then I had a section that was for each of my courses that I was teaching, and then within each of those courses, I can have a week 1, week 2. Your setup may vary depending on what you want to do and how you want to share it. But again, you can type in here. You can see there's a lot of things that you can do in here. You can have headings, you can have to-do lists, you can put in file attachments or file printouts, you can attach spreadsheets, online pictures, online videos, links. There's a lot that you can do in OneNote. There is the option to switch to a drawing mode. So if I switch to draw, now I can kind of do a sort of whiteboard, you know, can draw a little bit there. It's really terrible with a mouse, as I was always saying. And you can kind of change which drawings that you want available, like what pens, what colors. You can adjust all of that. In order to give your students access, again, you would probably end up having to, if I right-click here, I can copy the link to the page, and then I can put that in the chat for them. I can also share with them from like the file. There's a share, so you can share it with people. Typically, when you're sharing the whole notebook though, so you just may want to be wary about that. You can also export just a page, the whole section, or an entire notebook. So once you're done with a particular week, you can export it to a PDF if you'd like, or even to a Word document. So then you can make it available in something like Canvas or Titanium. It really just depends on how interactive you want your students to be able to be. You know, do you need them to be able to modify the whiteboard, or is it more for you to sort of scribble on there and, you know, they can use Zoom to give you feedback? So that's Microsoft Whiteboard and OneNote, I should say. So now what we're going to do is we are going to look at sharing an iPad app. Now there's actually a couple of different ways to do this. The one that I'm going to be showing you right now is when you do share screen and then you share the built-in iPhone, iPad. The other thing that some people like to do is they will actually sign into a Zoom meeting twice. So they will sign in on a laptop or a desktop, and then they will use the Zoom app on their iPad to sign in on the iPad as well. And that's absolutely fine. You can do things that way. They'll simply do a share screen at that point, and then you can share whichever app on there that you'd like. But this way, when you do the share screen, you don't have to be logged in twice. So it may be a little bit easier. So once you choose iPhone, iPad, and click share, what's going to pop up for me on my end when I do this is it's going to tell me here's the Wi-Fi network that you need to connect to. Because in this situation, I need to make sure that both my laptop and my iPad are using the same Wi-Fi network. Then I'm going to tap screen mirroring on my iPad, and then it's giving me the name that I need to choose from the list. So on my iPad, I'm going to go to my control screen, which is when you swipe down from the top right, you'll choose screen mirroring, and then you'll choose the Zoom right there. So yeah, let me go ahead and do that. So I'm going to stop my share for a moment, just so I can connect my iPad. All right, so you can see I chose the one that it gave me for today. And now you're able to see my iPad screen. So the one we're going to look at right now is, we'll start with notes. This one right there. So this is kind of a super lo-fi way of doing this. If you just need to be able to show people what your, some sort of whiteboard. So if I create a new one, I need to give it some sort of text. So this is my note. And then I'm going to click on this little drawing tool. And that switches me to this mode. And so now with my Apple Pencil, I can draw, I can whatever I need to do here. And you'll notice it's giving you kind of a separation between where you might have some text and then what this essentially is creating an image here. But again, I can change what color the default pens are, but I have basically a pen, I have a highlighter, I have another pen, I have an erase, and then I also have a ruler as well. So, and the erase is very much like anything else. You can just tap on it. And then the ruler, you can kind of adjust it however you'd like. And then that way you can make a nice straight line. With this, it's a little bit harder if you want to share this after the fact. So let's say that I don't need my students to be able to view this now, but I do want them to be able to get a copy later. I can actually share it with them using the Add People. However, they have to have Apple IDs, and really they kind of have to have access to Apple, like the notes, which means they need to have an iPad, they need to have an iPhone, they need to have a Mac computer. So I would be tempted to use the share. You can share it in a mail. So you can see I could share it as an email. I could also share it to OneNote. But I would probably be tempted to do either print or save image. And that will save it to your photos on your iPad. And from there, you could connect those photos to, say, your Dropbox or OneDrive and automatically upload them. You can also make it a PDF. The import to Acrobat, I have Adobe Acrobat on like the reader on my iPad. I don't quite like the way that this imports it. You could try it, see if it works for you, but I like the built-in sort of make PDF here. It just seems to work a little bit better in terms of the way that this shows up once you're done. But again, that's how you would share it there. So there's not a lot of options. You can actually put in some images, like you could scan a document with your with a camera on here. You could take a photo, you could pull something from your photo library. So you can kind of put some images in here. Can't really insert a PDF or any other files to look at, but you could put something from the photo library. You know, so I have some instructions in here and some of my other things from, there's my document camera setup from a different class. So you can do that. You can insert stuff like that if you'd like. But it's overall, it's fairly limited. You have to create them under iCloud, but you can create folders. So you could have folders for each of your classes, and then within those folders have multiple notes for each week or for each day, however you'd like for them. But this is it's a very simple way to do this, but it's maybe not as comprehensive as you may want. The other one we're going to look at here is Paper. This is by Dropbox. And Paper is available on the web as well as an iPad app here, but the Whiteboard feature itself is only part of the iPad app. However, you can, as I've done here, I've created a Dropbox Paper document. I created this on the web. I've added an image here. I could add more stuff in here if I'd like to, and then just edit it here, and it will synchronize between the two. So if we'll just open this up a little bit. So essentially, Dropbox Paper is very much like, it's very much like OneNote, but the idea is that you're able to invite a bunch of people to your Dropbox Paper app, and everybody has edit access. You have options to put things like, you can put to-do lists, you can insert Dropbox files, you can collaborate on Dropbox files. It's very nice to be able to do that. So in this case, I've put an image in here just to show that as long as you have the regular Dropbox app on your paper, it's going to know that. And in this case, all it's asking me is it knows I have 2 Dropbox accounts. I've linked the 2 of them. So which one do I want to use with paper? And I'm going to choose my CSU Fullerton one. So if I click Edit now, and I'm going to go below here. So you can see I have all these options, but here is the one that will switch me to like a draw mode. And it actually opens up a brand new open kind of whiteboard with, again, different pens, an eraser. It's very much like the iPad notes. You know, it's the same sort of options. And so then I can, again, just draw whatever I would like. And then when I tap Done, it puts it in as an image, whatever I had on my whiteboard, and adds it to this document. So with this, again, if you want your students to be able to edit it, what you would end up having to do is you would end up having to, I would probably do the copy link. Inviting people works. You would just have to put the email address for every single one of your students, which might be a lot. So if you copy the link, you can put that into the chat, into your Zoom. And you can copy the link not just from the iPad, you can do that from the web as well. And you could, in theory, have this document open on both your iPad and on your laptop at the same time. That's totally fine. But you could copy the link and then allow them to be able to edit this, or at least view it if you'd like. There is the option to print it from here. I believe you have a couple of extra options to export, but generally, since it's a scrolling document and it can be really, in theory, as long as you need it to be, it's maybe a little bit easier to share the link with folks rather than trying to export it to something else. But I can have as many different whiteboards as I want in here. So I can create a whole other one. And just keep going back and forth. And then when I'm done, I simply tap Done. And if I go back over here, you can see I just edited it. And it may take a moment for it to synchronize, but it shouldn't take very long. So that's Dropbox Paper. And as I mentioned before, OneNote is here as well. And it does synchronize. So here's my week 2 whiteboard and my week 1 whiteboard as well. And you can see there's, and it took just a moment to synchronize, but there it is. What I just did a little while ago. Likewise with Microsoft Whiteboard. Let's see if it'll let me in. There we go. So it's going to take it a moment, but there you are. So now I could open up this one. And you can see it's a little bit big because, of course, I did it on my desktop. Ooh. There it is. My screen kind of got moved over a little bit. There we go. So it is a little bit difficult to use if you have a larger screen resolution, but you are able to do it. And again, I can choose Draw. And just add to it. And then as soon as I go back here, it'll synchronize and it'll appear on my desktop app in the same way. So the only drawback I see to sharing my iPad screen this way is that it tends to take a couple of seconds. And some of that is my wireless. So there is sometimes a little bit of a delay between when I'm writing on my iPad and when I see it here on the shared screen and when participants will actually see it. There isn't as much of a delay when you are signed in on your iPad to Zoom and you're doing a share screen. It's maybe a little bit better there. But it can just depend on what your wireless is. The other thing that I find is that if my iPad has not been restarted recently, it will not find the share to actually share my screen. So usually what I do is I come to this class like 30 minutes early, try the share out, make sure it works. If it doesn't, I just restart my iPad and then try again, and it's fine. So you may just want to make a habit, if you're going to be using your iPad like this, to just turn it off, turn it back on right before class, and then you shouldn't have any issues. But again, it'll kind of depends on what your wireless is like. So I'm going to stop this share to go back to sharing my screen. And actually, I'm going to show you the Zoom whiteboard real quick, now that we've got that. So this is a Zoom whiteboard. It's really just a one big, giant whiteboard. So again, I'm using my mouse here, so it's not very difficult, So you do have the option. You won't be able to see it on your end, but I have a plus sign down here. I can create a second page here. So this would be like, here's second whiteboard. So you can toggle back and forth between the two. And they haven't said what the limit is as to how many you can do, but you may want to just be careful about how many you do, just so for keeping track of them. There is also an option that when you start the whiteboard, as soon as you stop it, it automatically saves all of your images. That's in the Zoom web portal. And that's one that I have turned on just so I don't have to remember to click the save button to save it. It will automatically save it as soon as I stop sharing. And if you do stop sharing and then share again, it'll still be here. So your whiteboard will persist throughout the actual meeting. Of course, once you end the meeting, it wipes the whiteboard out. So keep that in mind.